Round 2, episode 2 is up and live. What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about our Henry's Lake opener, a couple tips and tricks and things that we learned, and about how we lost my little tinfoil boat, as Thomas would call it.
Yes. This is actually a good time for me to plug in for our Twitter account. Go look us up on Twitter. Search Forgotten Outdoors. I talk about Ben's boat a lot because it's a little aluminum boat, but after we tell the story of this trip, it might as well be made out of tinfoil.
Yeah, it's all really mean things that he talks about with my boat. He's just jealous because he doesn't have a boat. But anyways.
Oh, before we actually get into it, Ben, you should talk about your boat experience with the guy at the gas station.
So a couple weeks ago, we went to Bear Lake, and we had been down there, but we've never been down there like fishing or anything. And so I have this little 14-foot John, little aluminum boat, and it's small. It doesn't go very fast. It has I think it's a 10 horsepower Evinrude.
That's being generous.
Yeah. But everybody always gives me crap. You know, there's always a bunch of people that want to get into it and go fishing or go ride around, and it weighs it down when you got three big guys in there. So I always get crap. I got crap that whole weekend. I go up with freaking Thomas and Logan Baker on this Henry's Lake trip, and I'm getting a bunch of crap from them that morning. And so we pull up to Maverick, and there's some product placement. I'm just kidding. We're not sponsored by Maverick. We pull up to Adventure's first stop, and it's like 5 a.m, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
early.
it's super early. And we parked there, and I'm in the gas station grabbing some stuff, and he's like wondering where we're going and everything, and he's like, "Oh, well, it just sounds like you need a bigger boat." So
just this random dude jumped on the
guy.
bandwagon of making fun of Ben's boat.
They're all jealous. The SS Margaritaville, as we would call it. She's beautiful. Anyway, can we start now, Thomas?
Yes.
Are we good to start?
Getting into the actual meat of the podcast.
Okay, so just I guess before we get into our story about about Henry's Lake, we should talk about Henry's Lake in general. So it's about an hour and 20 minutes from where we live here in Rexburg, Idaho, southeastern Idaho. It's up kind of by Island Park, and it's an awesome lake, trophy trout fishing lake. It doesn't get very deep. It only gets about 20 at the deepest, but most of it's around 10 feet deep. And that's like the go-to spot around here for big trout. And we fished it a lot. Thomas, I know that you fished it a lot with your grandpa growing up.
Yeah, so my grandpa had a boat when I was a little kid, and we used to just go and we used to bait fish it with worms. We just tie the worm to the hook, let it sink to the bottom, and basically we just all sit there until one of the poles started moving, and then the whole boat broke out. Everyone's moving, grabbing things, trying to get the fish in. So that was kind of how I grew up fishing Henry's Lake, was with my grandpa on his boat. We'd get to the middle of the lake and just drop worms. All of us would drop worms.
Well, yeah, you brought it up the last time. Not opening day. We went back 5 days later, and we were out on the boat. But you brought it up because my boat, again, it's tiny, and we had a bunch of line, like our poles. We were fighting lines, getting tangled up, and you brought it up that's how it used to be with on your grandpa's boat.
Yeah. So the funny part was, so like my dad, my grandpa, any of the adults on the boat, it seemed like they were spending a lot of time untangling everyone else's poles while us kids were fishing. So I don't know. If you're really wanting to get some fishing in, you may not want to bring kids. They tangle up the lines, they lose their hooks, they get snagged on stuff, and then you will spend most of your time just fixing their mistakes. But yeah, that was kind of how we did it anyway.
Yeah, that's always kind of a give and take when you're going with somebody. And I'm glad that people took me when I didn't know a lot, but it's kind of a give and take. You know, like if you want to just like truly focus on fishing, you know, kind of go by yourself or with one or two people that know what they're doing. But it's a give and take. It's so fun to see somebody kind of get into the sport for the first time,
for sure,
and hook into their first fish and that tug, you know, and it's just like wiggling and the grin on their face. Just we're getting sidetracked now, but just this last weekend, my sister and her fiance, I don't think they'd ever been fishing before, and her boss was going out fishing. And so they called me and they're like, "Can we borrow some poles?" And so I gave them some of my poles, gave them two of my tackle boxes, kind of ran them through what they should use. They're going to American Falls Reservoir. And yeah, that night they called me and they were just ecstatic because they caught like 2 smallmouth bass that were like 4 inches long. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, just feeling that tug in and everything." It was awesome. It was awesome. If you guys are listening to this, yeah, the fish were like 40 inches, like some 10-pound smallies. But where were we, Thomas?
So
Get us on track.
Yeah, I think just going back to talking about more of our actual trip. So like Ben said, it was me, him, and then we brought up Logan Baker, who works with Ben. We're just going to put a shout out for him right now because he did outfish us on this trip. He did.
Barely.
But he did. But yeah, so to start the trip,
not to cut you off, Thomas, but that's just something that needs to be addressed right now. Is like 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, freaking stupid Logan Baker. I hope you're listening to this. Like, I would beg him. I'd be like, "Man, come on! Like, we got to go fishing. I have this little boat. We could go up to Henry's." "Oh man, I'm busy." He'd always blow me off. Like, never really got into fishing. And so he gets into fishing not too long ago. And now this is like 2 times in a row that I've taken him fishing, and he's freaking outfished me. Anyway, continue.
So anyway, we had this bright idea. We have never fished Henry's opener ever. Any of us, none of us have.
Yeah, we don't want to fight the crowds.
It's very popular. A lot of people come up from all over to come put their boats in the water, and honestly, they usually have a lot of success. They end up publishing all the size of fish that were pulled out. Everything is usually pretty big. So it's a very popular opening day event for a lot of people who like to fish. Yeah. So anyway, we had the bright idea that we were going to go night fish it. So we woke up about 1 o'clock in the morning and had the idea to go meet at Ben's place around 1:32. And then we were going to hit the road, get up there way early, pitch black, try to get on the water before anybody else gets on the water, do some night fishing, and kind of just see what happens.
Yeah, it was funny, too, because we filmed our first podcast episode the night before.
Yes.
And you can't really tell because you can't see any windows, but it's like 11:30 at night right now. So, like, the first episode we filmed and we got home at, like, what?
12:30.
Yeah.
Basically took a nap and then met up.
Took a nap and then headed up. Anyway, continue, Thomas. I'm distracting us today.
Yeah, so we get up to Henry's Lake. We're actually putting in, what time was it, like 4:30? 3:30?
No, it was 3:30. Yeah, because we left at 2. About an hour and a half.
Yeah, so we get to Henry's. We put the boat in at 3:30. And, again, it's pitch black outside. We have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah.
We start kind of trolling out with Ben's little boat, and we're hitting like some small waves, but that's not uncommon on the lake. So we kind of just kept going a little ways, and then we drop anchor, we start fishing, and before we know it, like we've got swells coming in, but we can't see. It's pitch black, so we can't even see how big they actually are. We're just kind of feeling the rock of the boat. I'm starting to taste my breakfast because I don't do well with that stuff. So,
and that's the hard thing. Like with a small boat like that, you kind of have to angle yourself to with the right angle towards the waves, or else it can like capsize you. You kind of have to hit them right. And so in the dark like that, it's kind of hard because we couldn't see where these freaking waves were coming from.
Yeah, and so I kind of jokingly tell Ben that I won't make fun of him if he wants to call it and go out into the or take the boat back, because I'm sitting here thinking like I'm gonna throw up and we're gonna tip all of our gear out of this boat. so anyway, about 4:30, we end up kind of calling it. We're like, okay, these swells are getting pretty big. We better go back. And so we go and we dock Ben's boat on this little beach. And we just dock it. We pull it out of the water, walk back to the truck. We acted like we were going to take a nap, but we ended up just sitting there talking until the sun kind of came up. And then we got out, and it looked like we were on the ocean.
Yeah, it was crazy. And kind of to give you a picture of like where we were at, it's not one of the main boat docks. So it's kind of around the backside. If you fished Henry, it's over at the cliffs. So it's not like a really legit boat dock by any means. It's kind of just a gravel sloped road. And then coming out from it to kind of block from the waves and everything, there's like 3 big boulders out there. So kind of off a little ways, we docked the boat and just left it. Like Thomas said, we sat in the pickup, and yeah, like by the time the sun came up, the wind just kept picking up, and it was howling, and it was pushing. It looked like the ocean, curling waves coming across. The wind was blowing directly at us, so it was picking up all the water from across the lake and just slamming it into us. So we're like, freak, like we need to get this boat out of the water. Not only are we not going to fish the water in the lake, but we got to get it on my trailer because it's going to thrash my little tinfoil boat. And so we start trying to like walk it down the bank, and this like our boat is getting picked up like 5 feet. It's picking us up and then like dropping it on like 2 inches of water like it would on the freaking ocean.
Yeah, and at this point, it'd become like we're in life or death mode. Like
there was a switch.
Yes, there was a brief moment where I was like, I should be filming this. This is crazy. Like this is the winds and everything is crazy. And I was like, I'm not even taking my phone out. Like, what can I do to help? Like, it is all hands on deck. We got to get this boat out of the water. Otherwise, bye to the tinfoil boat. So Ben and Logan are kind of moving the boat. I'm back in the trailer in. We're all trying to work together. And all of a sudden, like Ben was explaining, those 3 boulders get in the way, and this boat just starts hammering these rocks over and over.
Well, yeah, like what I had to do was like I couldn't troll out. I couldn't kick my outboard on because it's like 5 feet of water, 2 inches of water.
Yep.
So I couldn't get out far enough to get around these freaking boulders.
Yeah.
And so I hop in my boat, and I'm like trying to drag myself around these boulders so that I can get to where we need to load the boat in and get the actual trailer in. And yeah, like Thomas said, it is just picking us up and slamming us into the side of this boulder. And I have some nice new dents in the side of my boat from that day.
Yes. And I mean, the good news is no holes. Like the boat's not leaking.
No, it's good.
But it's got some new scars.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
battle wounds.
So this is our morning. At this point, it's only 6 a.m, and we've already had to call off fishing in the boat.
Yeah.
So we had brought up all this bait. We brought up some sucker fish meat. We brought up worms. We brought up all this stuff that we were going to fish from the boat with. And now all that's garbage. Like it's just worthless to us now.
Yeah.
So at this point, we kind of get into our actual day of fishing because we just had to kind of abandon all of our original plans and start looking for other options.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and where we were at, like I said, we were kind of like, the wind was hitting us in the face. So that's where the waves were the very worst. So we had to find somewhere that we could actually fish because when the water's moving that much and it's rising and dropping, there's not going to be fish there. And you can't really cast into the wind that far. And then it just pushes your lure or whatever you're using right back at you. So we started driving around the lake and we found this one little turnoff. And that we could have access to. And we just were like, let's just try to fish the bank for a little bit. And the weather, it was just crazy. The wind was howling. It started to snow really bad on us up there.
Like blizzarding.
Yeah,
just
almost white out.
Horizontal.
Yeah, and so we're like, let's just try it. We're up here. It's opener. And we all started using different lures, but we were all using lures. Thomas was using a spoon. I was using a Panther Martin spinner, and Logan was too. And so we just went to the bank and started like really early on, just started hammering fish off of the bank.
It was quick.
Yeah, it didn't take much time. And we stayed in that spot for a couple hours and just fish after fish after fish after fish. And they were all decent fish too. I mean, there was nothing, it wasn't any of the big trophies that you get up at Henry's. You get like those, 10, 12, 15-pound trout that get pulled out of there sometimes. We were pulling out, 2.5, maybe a 3-pounder here and there. So still good fish.
Yeah.
But nothing under like 1.5 pounds, I don't think.
No, they were all pretty good-sized fish. And that's the thing is, like, at this point, since we abandoned our original plan of basically bait fishing, now we're using spinner rods.
Yeah.
And we're just fishing spinners. So that was just a totally different tactic. We kind of had to switch our mindset and switch over to that. And the thing that was kind of crazy is really we didn't have to switch out what kind of lure we're using. Once we all chose one, we kind of stuck to that for the rest of the day. I think at one point you were fishing like blue and silver though.
Yeah, like you'll hear this a lot. My go-to, we call it the old reliable, old reliable. It's a Panther Martin. I'm giving away my trade secrets right here because I'm a professional fisherman, even though I get outfished. Anyway, it's a Panther Martin. It's a size 9. It's got a gold spoon on it, a black body with 3 yellow dots. That's it. That's the old reliable. And I started out with it. I didn't catch that many fish. I mean, I was like falling behind pretty quick. I think Thomas was up to like 4. Logan was up to like 4, and I hadn't caught any. So I'm like, I got to change something. And so, yeah, I had like a big old size 15 Panther Martin, and it was like a silver spoon with just a blue body. And I threw that thing on, and I hammered a fish. And we let
like
it off.
3 casts in a row.
Yeah. And so I cast it out again, and I hammer a fish the very next cast. And so Thomas and Logan are both like, man, if you hit one more fish, we're going to change our stuff. And I cast it out there, and I start reeling back in, and hammered another fish, 3 in a row. It was awesome. So yeah, like I was using that, and Thomas, he was using one of the cheapest lures that you can buy.
Yeah, the phrase of the day became pot of gold every time I caught a fish, because
Pot of gold.
honestly, like this lure compared to like the ones that Ben's talking about, these Panther Martins, it's like half the cost. So it's it just kind of goes to show that sometimes it just really doesn't matter. Like price doesn't matter when it comes to a lure. Like I'm spending $2 on that pot of gold, and Ben's spending $4 on a Panther Martin,
4 or
give
5,
or take,
yeah.
So yeah, for those listening, like that's sometimes it just is what it is. Like depending on the day, depending on what kind of lighting you have, your lure could be successful depending on the weather. Like it's honestly kind of just a guessing game, and that's why it's kind of fun to have a bunch of different options so you can switch in and out. If something's not hitting, kind of like what Ben's talking about with that blue and silver, for a minute that was hitting, so we all switched to that, and then after a while that kind of died out, and we switched back to, like for me, I switched back to pot of gold and started catching fish again. So it just kind of depends. It's really just a guessing game, but that's what makes it kind of fun is you're really just trying to tempt these fish. You're really just trying to entice these fish, trick these fish, make them think that you're a smaller fish that they can easily prey on, and so that's kind of the fun of it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's any kind of advice that I could give from my experience catching fish, especially trout, is if it's not working, change.
Just switch it.
Change something.
Yeah.
I mean, you have those like little barrel snap swivels that you throw on the end of your line, and you can switch out lures all day. If you've cast 20 times and you haven't got a bite, switch out your lure or switch to bait, or try, if you fly fish, throw out the fly rod, or go to a different spot, try something different to catch fish. And it's so fun to try to figure out, okay, today, what are the fish going to be biting? Here's an example from this trip, actually. So we fished this spot on Henry's opener, and we caught 55 fish that day.
Yeah.
Awesome day.
55.
Awesome day. I think Logan caught 20. I caught like 18, and you caught 17, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it was like we were all really close. All caught a ton of fish. And we didn't fish all day. We probably fished for 4 hours? Maybe 5?
Yeah, probably, because we spent a lot of that time
Driving around
and
and
maneuvering
trying to
the
get
wind.
in the boat. Yeah. And so we went back 5 days later, and the lake was glass, and it was like 75 degrees, 80 degrees.
Perfect weather.
It was beautiful weather, and we caught 1 fish. And we fished the exact same spot.
Yeah, and that time we even got out on the boat.
Yeah.
We're fishing with bait. We're doing all the things that we wanted to do opening day that we couldn't. And now here we are, and Ben hooks up on 1 fish.
Yeah, I had 2 other bites. I had 1 fish on that I got off, and I had 1 other bite. But you and Logan didn't even have a bite.
Yeah, we didn't touch fish.
And so, like, after a couple hours, we were like, screw this. We loaded the boat back up, drove around, went to that same spot and tried to bank fish it. Nothing. Not a fish chasing, not a bite, no fish jumping or rising or anything. And so it just shows the difference of what the conditions can do to the fish. I mean, 5 days later, and it was a world of difference. We were using the exact same lures in the exact same spot, exact same tactics. They wanted nothing to do with it.
And for us, I think towards the end of the trip that Ben's talking about, the 5 days later trip, we kind of realized these fish just aren't hungry, and the reason why is because there had been this massive hatch.
Huge hatch.
So they were bugs everywhere. So these fish are feeding off the top of the water. They're jumping up. They're snatching these flies, bugs, whatever they are. They're pulling them from the top of the water. They're eating that, and they're full. They don't want to waste their energy chasing our lures. So for us, like, that was a really big learning moment, at least for me, because I was like, this is crazy. They should be hitting this. But what it comes down to is we fished on a really terrible weather day on the opener day, and there were no bugs. These fish had nothing to eat, so they're hungry. So they're chasing after our lures. They want what we're offering. But then 5 days later, this hatch happens, and their bellies are full. They don't need our food.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just time of year. Like, and, if we had known, we maybe would have packed fly fishing gear.
Yeah.
And tried fishing top of the water to see if we had more luck with that. But, I mean, it's a gamble game.
Yeah, and I don't even think that day it would have mattered. I think the fish had filled up.
Yeah, they were
full. And because a lot of these hatches, like most of those bugs, they hatch in the water. They're in the rocks. That's where the eggs get laid. They hatch and they start, swimming to the surface, and then they grow their freaking wings on the surface.
Yeah,
and fly off.
I don't know how it all works.
Depending on the bug. So a lot of those fish, they say that it's 75% of what a fish eats is underwater, as far as bugs go. And so I think these fish had filled up, and that day that we went up, they were done. I mean, I don't know. We didn't pull out the fly rod. But we didn't see very many fish rising either.
No,
that
we didn't.
day.
I mean, we saw a couple, but not enough to say, oh, they're hitting hard.
Yeah, no, not by any means. So yeah, it's fun. It's a fun game to try to figure out. And some days it's frustrating. I won't lie, we got a little frustrated.
Yeah.
I think because we got spoiled on Henry's opener, snagging fish every few casts. We were pulling into a good fish. But it's a fun game. It's always different. It depends on so many different variables, and I don't think anybody has the answer. Maybe some of you grandpas out there, that just have that magic touch, you might have figured it out. But as far as us and a lot of people we fish with, we all have different ideas and different tactics. But it's really just kind of this big kind of mystery guessing game of let's try a bunch of different stuff. Today we're on the river and we're going to try to catch these fish.
Yep.
It's late in October and let's see what they're trying to hit. It's not working. Let's switch to something else until you find that. And it's like, oh, they're hitting, and then they hit, and then they hit, and then they hit. And sometimes even they'll hit something for a while in one day.
Yep.
And then an hour goes by and they stop hitting it, and you switch out and they start hitting something different that they weren't hitting earlier. So it's a fun game.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, at least for me, I think the takeaways from the opener and then the trip 5 days later is that you make sure you have options. Make sure you have, the ability to switch. Because, I feel like I grew up basically bait fishing. And if they weren't hitting worms, I'm just out of luck, And so give yourself options. Maybe just start picking up 1 or 2 lures every time you go to the grocery store. Just start building up.
It's a good way to hide them from the wife.
Yeah, just start building up a collection so that you have the option to switch. You have the option to kind of be tactful in the way that you're fishing. So that's kind of the key takeaway. And honestly, the other key takeaway would be weather really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I honestly, that blew me away because I thought, okay, it's snowing, it's blowing, it's cold. These fish are not going to be moving. But I was totally wrong.
And so they were moving.
And then the 5 days later, beautiful weather, fish aren't hitting. So weather really doesn't matter that much other than how you prepare for your trip. For us, we had to make sure that we had lots of layers on opener day. It was cold. We were all wearing 2 or 3 jackets and just trying to stay warm. And then the next day we had the option to kind of shed layers. Or the trip 5 days later, we were shedding layers. So
yeah, there's a difference in I was in my whitetail, late December hunting whitetail kind of Gore-Tex clothes from Sitka, and I had my big tall rubber boots on, and then on 5 days later I was in my short little fishing shorts, and a button down shirt because it was hot. So and that's one thing that it's you can fish that nasty weather, but just come prepared and make sure that you have the right gear, because we had different boots on.
Yeah.
And I had the high lacrosse rubber boots, and you had some good waterproof boots, but weren't quite as high. And
yeah, mine are more like an ankle boot, and so once that water got over the top of them, it was game over for me.
Yeah.
And we got water getting in my boots early on because we're trying to rescue Ben's boat. So,
Yeah.
so that's the thing is you just gotta, do as much preparing as you can. But honestly, yeah, the weather really didn't change the fishing as much as you'd think it would. I'm sure it has an effect, but comparing those two experiences, it was honestly mind blowing.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you have to go out and like break the bank, buy all the nicest gear. It just makes it more pleasurable.
Yeah.
You can still go out and be cold and still catch fish. And with buying lures too, you don't have to have, 100 different options. I mean, it helps to have more options, but you have a couple silver ones, a couple gold ones. That's the biggest difference I've found is like
Colors.
Are they hitting silver or gold?
Yeah.
They have a lot of fancy lures out there, and maybe I'm just not that fancy of a guy, but it's like gold or silver today.
Yep. So yeah, I hope that those kind of key takeaways help you guys. Like we kind of stated in our very first episode, our goal is kind of give you guys maybe the encouragement, give you the confidence to get outside and try some of these hobbies that we love and that we love to do as much as we can. So hopefully these tips kind of help you. We'd love to hear some feedback. So be sure to follow us on our Instagram page, Facebook page. Like I mentioned before, we are on Twitter and soon to be very active on YouTube. So if you watch this podcast on YouTube, then you can hit us up with some comments. But yeah, we would love to hear from you. And if you guys if you fished Henry's this year and you tried something that worked really well, we'd love to hear it, and we'd love to share it with those who are following us.
And if you guys want to check out, it's just a little 1-minute short video of our trip. We did film a little video of our trip up to Henry's on opening day and how cold it was. Again, we're going to say it a million times. We're not the experts by any means. We're not the professionals. You might be listening to this and be like, no, that's wrong. Hit us up. Tell us it's wrong. Like, tell us your ideas, the ways that you do things, the way that your grandpa taught you. And we want you guys to share your experience with us. It'll make us better. It'll make everybody a little bit better. That's what this is about, is just kind of sharing our experience. Hopefully we can start getting more feedback from you guys and hearing if you liked it or if you changed something or some of your trips. And we're excited. We love this. Episode 2. Kind of wrapping up here. Our shameless plug of hitting us up on all of our other platforms, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff.
Yep.
And with that, any final words, Tom?
None. That is a wrap.
All right, that's a wrap. We'll give our cutoff. Boom.
Perfect.
Done.
Do it.